Hello and welcome to another StarCraft 2 co-op video. Today we'll be taking a look at a post from a Chinese co-op community forum about the upcoming mutation growing threat and their advice on how to beat it. So we're just going to take a look at what they say. I'm not going to say my opinions. This is not the tier list. The tier list might be separate. So let's get started. For Zarg and Steadbrains, Stukal's volatile-infested HH space station and the trash units which have researched their respective on-death effects, their deaths will not trigger transmutation because when they take lethal damage, they will use their weapons or abilities to off themselves. However, serious turrets with the explosion upgrade and Meng's exploding troopers aren't included. When the Hyperion suffers fatal damage, it first becomes invincible, then leaves, so it won't trigger transmutation.
Based on the standard of doing 75% of the work in solo queue, only Kerrigan is usable among the 3 free-to-play commanders. Raynor has to pray for a pure ground comp so he can mass spider mines. Don't even think about Artanis, he might be worse than Raynor. There are good choices among the rest, like Alarak, Lone Wolf, Statman. Lastly, I recommend quitting if you see Lord of the Horde. Edit. Kerrigan can go P0 and make mutas. If you must use Artanis, use P1.
Someone already covered the 3 free-to-play commanders, so I won't repeat them. I'll just talk about the rest. Swan and Karax. Once they transmutate into hybrids, their attacks will be destructive. I suggest praying for an enemy comp like Immortal Colossus that lacks anti-air, then use air units or floating factories and your precious top bar to take out the enemies. Broodlings can be taken care of using the flaming betties that you scatter everywhere and your reviving zealots. Vorazun. Taking care of attack waves is doable, but cleaning up the broodlings afterwards won't be easy because Vorazun has 0 AoE capabilities. Alarak. Try using the TF boys. As a side note, our ascendants, they're called the TF boys because you use T for Psionic Orb and F for Mind Blast. Try using the TF boys and Dead Fleet. Throw lots of Psionic Orbs, use Destroyers and Alarak's Destruction Wave to stop broodlings from transmutating. Note, you must upgrade the Destruction Wave range because the ranges of Psionic Orbs and Destroyers aren't great for keeping your distance from the hybrids. You need Alarak to push them away as the final blow. Zagara. Commanders that trade with Amon should just say bye to this mutation, but in the one situation when you have to face a lot of air enemies, covering the sky with Scourge is more effective than many other air units. Abathur. You must remember to make roaches before farming or else the broodlings will go to your base and become hybrid, then it's over. A quick Bruta will serve as the broodling cleanup, a tank, and the early game DPS. In the late game, use any long-range units. I recommend Ravagers because their abilities range is wide, DPS is high, and cooldown is short. Nova. With Hellbats and Shotgun mode, she's pretty good at dealing with broodlings, but because of her unit production mechanism, you must avoid suffering losses. Avoid using Hellbats if you can. Just using Liberators to kill hybrids from long range will take care of 80% of your problems. Stukov. Your computer says it wants to call the cops on you. Seriously, I suggest praying for a weak enemy comp like Terran Bile, then use P1 mech to take care of them. Slime upgrade owns broodlings. Liberators can take care of all air units except the air hybrid, perfect for destroying Amon's BCs. Phoenix. Avenging Protocol sees this mutation and laughs.jpg. Fighting head-on is like this. Phoenix just has to make warp gates everywhere. Amon has to think about which 3 mutator combo to use to stop one fully avengered super rock slapper. Dehaka. Hero unit and Tyrannosaurs serve as tanks to stop the broodlings. Creeper hosts are in the back launching missiles to take out high-value units. 3 pack leaders in case of emergencies. Perfect. Tychus. You know, roasted bugs is delicious. The bugs roasted by Lone Wolf are even more delicious. Just spray some oil and light them up. Let Tychus spray and pray the rest. Zeratol. In duels, make a robo and then leave the broodlings to your ally or spin to win with P3. Usually, it's even better to use the yellow avatar to prevent any fish from leaking through the net. Use DTs against a pure ground comp. Of course, remember to make some cannons at home to stop the trickles, since blinking to take care of a few broodlings is kind of a waste. Stetman. Super Gary E-Gorps twice plus hardened shieldlings and add some anti-air. What hybrids? They're just trash that cost less than half of Stedman's units. Mix. Aside from hybrids being a bit problematic, the rest is the usual. I suggest getting a rank 3 BC and using Yamato to take out hybrids. At the same time, remember to protect the lives of troopers. If you have the chance, spawn camp the spawn points with several full bunkers so you can take out long-range siege units like tanks and reavers. Actually, I think P1 tanks against ground can be quite effective. Volatile infested don't trigger transmutation upon death. Tanks themselves have 18 range, which is out of the hybrid's danger zone. Broodlings also die when they explode. It's just that you can't use infrastructure in the early game, and that air hybrid are a bit slow-witted. If you stall them, it's just for a second. I feel that it's better to just clear out the ground units, then send in 2 queens, blast them 4 times, then die with them. When this first came out, Alarak lovers had their moment of glory.
I feel that for solo queue, Artanis is better than Raynor. Shield Overcharge prevents transmutation and is quite reliable. Conversely, Raynor has to pray for a ground enemy, and even if it is, it's not that great. Especially if you're not proficient. Forcing a vulture opening will make it easy for spider mines to feed transmutation.
If you have an ally, Artanis' Guardian Shell and Shield Overcharge can make things more forgiving. For this mutation, Artanis can skip Dragoons and use Tempest Zealot. Tempest can take out Hybrid from afar. Zealots hold Amon's units in place, and the spin can take care of Broodlings. The 2 tower commanders. ECAF mutation as long as your ally doesn't feed transmutation for fun. The trash waves in the early game can't be threatening to the towers in any way. Use top bars and trash buildings to take care of big attack waves as long as you aren't fighting Protoss. Immortals, Reavers, and Hybrids aren't things that the early commanders can take into consideration. Borazun, you don't have AoE, but you have a Dark Pylon wall. Abathur, don't use. Most people aren't good enough to simultaneously farm while taking care of the Broodlings. Han Horner, a mutation where strike fighters are the most useful. P2 air fleet on the offense, Hellions and Hellbats defend the base. When there's transmutation, prioritize dealing with the ones that can transmutate to more dangerous things. However, on MO, there's quite a bit of pressure in the early game, so this is a battle for the commanders that were introduced later. With Lone Wolf, fighting a ground AI will be easier, especially ground Zerg. Blaze and Nux are both good at pushing. They can evaporate with attack waves and Broodlings with just one button. Sirius needs to get the C equipment earlier to deal with Broodlings. Lots of enemies in the late game. It's not uncommon to see 5 to 6 big hybrids due to transmutation. Sam, Cannonball, and Rattlesnake each have their own strengths. I personally prefer Cannonball as he has high single target DPS, high HP, has revive as well as AoE. His AoE damage is low, but it's enough to deal with Broodlings. He can also survive getting ganged up by hybrids. He can eat a few nukes without dying. Sam can take out hybrids, but he only has 3 shots and has the kite to dodge nukes. If you can't take out the Broodlings quickly, you'll need to micro considerably more. Rattlesnake can take out hybrids rather quickly. He can also heal, but his HP is too low. If he eats a nuke, his healing stick will be gone, so he's a bit weaker. Vega is a bit difficult to use this week and requires micro. She's not good versus any of the mutators. Unless you're fighting a pure air comp, I don't really recommend choosing her. In my Lone Wolf solo, I use Sirius, Nux, Sam, Blaze, but I used spawn point stuffing to control where they came from, so the whole time I only had to fight from at most 2 directions. I knew where they would come from for most of the waves, so I just kept them. Basically, Nux and Tychus were my main army. Sirius just roamed around freely throwing turrets for these 2 guys after the first 2 bot waves, and Blaze was mostly the IDEF guy at home. When dealing with the Broodlings, thanks to Lone Wolf's damage reduction plus armor reducing their damage, they didn't really have a chance to transmutate. Even if they transmutate, they become T1 units, then Tychus just reaches to get a grenade and that's it. Nux can just electrocute them. Admittedly, Sirius's turrets can feed transmutation, which Sirius then has to deal with. What I thought was great about Sam when I picked him was, Aside from the big wave when he teams up with Odin to pick off whoever's left, there are also a total of 5 hybrid Reavers in the 4th and 5th areas. He can easily pick them off. Hybrid Reavers nukes have a range of 8 like hybrid behemoths, and love to fight up close in your face. For my level of micro and reaction timing, aside from bombing them, I can only use the medevac to avoid the nuke. After hearing your explanation, I feel that using Cannonball to deal with nukes is not a bad idea. Of course, Takis and Sirius are the main army for the early game. Nux needs his equipment before he is useful, so that's about 10 minutes or later. If it's an air comp, Blaze isn't very useful. He'll leak many enemies and let the air enemies transmutate. If they transmutate into a Brute Lord or Carrier, he can only run. So against an air comp, Vega is a relatively good way to deal with them. Try to get air units that can attack both air and ground like Scouts, Mutas, Banshees, Vikings, and Liberators. Sam does a lot of damage, but he can't take a lot of damage. He can use the Super Cloak to de-aggro the enemies, but Hybrids and Brootlings will go directly to your base. It's quite awkward when he gets surrounded by Brootlings when his Super Cloak is on cooldown. If your medevac is also on cooldown, he just has to eat the nuke. Cannonball with 5 armor plus revive plus lone wolf damage reduction is about 8,000 HP. Of course, if you can control where the waves spawn, 1 to 2 auto outlaws can idle. And that's it for this video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the comedy, the content, whatever you want to call it. And hopefully you learned something new. This mutation is not very easy, so hopefully you can use this advice in your games. That's it for today. See you next time.